ago.
I'm terribly confused.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Ice Team podcast. First and foremost, we want to thank all of our fans for the first run of podcasts. We had a handful out the window. We got a lot of great feedback. Thank you so much. We took a little sabbatical during the holiday season, Christmas, New Year's. Thane got his teeth pulled. We had all kinds of stuff going. Literally, he's going to talk about it, I'm sure. We had a lot of stuff going on for the holidays, so we wanted to give ourselves a break. Durham took a great break. He's a school teacher. I can't imagine how good it feels probably for Christmas break when you get to teach kindergartners every single day. But we're back at it now. We got some special guests for us today, so this is going to be kind of a fun one. We're inside the walls at Clam Outdoors here, where a lot of this takes place, and we're going to kind of jump on the state of the union, state of affairs, talk about what's going on out there on the ice because it's interesting right now with the snow, all that kind of stuff. We got another special guest hopping on in about a half hour. But to get things started, you got Thayne Jensen here across from me. You guys already know Drew Aspinwall. Introduced him a dozen times. So Thane has been influential with Clam Ice Team, a number of things for many, many years. He cut his teeth here as the head of customer service. Now we get to play with him on the marketing side of things. He's at events. He's on the ice. He travels all over the place. So we get to have Thane join us in his wittiness and all. So welcome to the podcast, Thane.
I like it. Thank you. Like I said, thanks. Welcome. This is cool. This is super fun. I've seen you guys doing a ton of these, and to be able to be a part of it, I'm super jacked up.
Yeah. And Thane said, he asked us a question. He's like, how goofy can I be? And if anyone knows Thane, I run an ice fishing league, and I have this guy across from me, Thane. He is the person behind the camera or in front of the camera running our live feeds because he's very entertaining. So he asked me, how goofy can I be? A 3?
Yeah. You want me at a 3 out of 10, or you want me, can we just peg this thing right out of the gate? So we're going to start out kind of, in that
Thane
3.
out of 10. You're a Thane out of 10.
A Thane out of 10.
Thane out of 10.
Oh.
Yep.
So anybody, you may or may not know this, and I don't know if I'm letting the cat out of the bag. We have morph figures at these ice fishing shows, especially St. Paul. And if you know what a morph person is, it's that a person inside that all white costume, like you're a mannequin, right? And then you have him in an ice armor suit. So Thane got to sweat it out in the morph suit at the St. Paul Ice Show. So you may have crossed paths with Thane at the biggest ice fishing show in the world and not even known it.
Hopefully I didn't terrify you. I don't think I didn't get punched this time. Yeah, it's a ton of fun. I love doing that stuff. And it's never really, I'm not really looking to scare folks, whereas, you're just trying to scare people. No.
Sometimes.
I'm just trying to startle you.
Yeah.
Just have fun, right? There's a lot going on at those shows. So a little levity, I think, goes a long ways. I know it does for our team.
Yeah, for sure.
And some of the other vendors that are there, and I'm an equal opportunity startler.
Yeah,
I'll go to anyone. I'll go stand there and just stand at the end of a amped batteries. I stood there and just stared at Matt from the corner of his booth for 5 minutes. And he's like, "This dude is staring at me." He's like, "What is going on?"
Yeah,
I just never lost it.
Yeah,
I'm like. Finally, I just had to leave because I'm like, he's not happy with me right now.
And then we paired you with a gentleman by the name of Getch. We call him Getch, good friend of the team here, good friend of Drew's. And I'll tell you what, we found the yin to the yang in that scenario.
That was a good tandem there.
Oh, I got to see you throughout the show in different booths, whether it was Snow Dog, whether it was here, whether it was there, just having fun. And, that's what it's all about. And anyone, maybe you might be getting to know Thane a bit on this podcast. A lot of you may have met him. You're going to learn about Thane quickly is that you like to have fun.
Oh, yeah.
You take things serious when it needs to be serious, but you also want to have fun. You want to entertain. And when you actually came to us with the morph suit idea, this was your brainchild a couple years ago at the Fargo Ice Fishing Show.
Yeah. Yep. And I think it was something my daughters saw on TikTok or something. They're like, "Dad, you should do this at the ice show."
They did that at the hockey games. Remember that? It was I think it was a Vancouver Canucks. They'd dress up in a blue or a green morph suit. Yeah. Nothing but the morph suit though. No ice armor suit.
And they would
terrorize the guys in the penalty box when they're sitting there for their 2 minutes.
I'm just gonna tell you right now, bro. I ain't going without something over the morph suit.
I don't think we need you not to.
Jensen and Getch just in the morph suit.
God.
Oh boy,
you would have problems.
Yeah. Nightmares. You said you don't like scaring, startling.
That'd be beyond startle.
See, I meant what I said. I'm not trying to scare people. You don't want to see me like that. Trust me.
We'll keep you in a scent suit.
It's not pretty. Top of
it. So like I said, now Thane is helping us on the marketing side. He's been at events like Bassmaster Classic. You've been at the Forest Wood Cup. You've been at things all over the country. You've done ice events, open water events. So it's kind of fun to get you on the show. You have a wealth of knowledge, not just about the events, but about fishing. You know, Thane did well. You guys won a tournament this summer. Thane and Drew won.
I don't win much, but when I do, I've got a really good partner.
Valid. Oh, you did good at the Rapid Marine tournament on Minnetonka too. You had big bass, so
yeah, I got lucky.
Yeah, so sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
Broken clock is right twice a day, boys.
Even a steak, or even a garbage gets a steak.
10-4.
Yeah,
it's typically.
I had you at steak.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we're done.
So I alluded to the Thaner. We have all kinds of nicknames for Thane. I call him Thaner. I call him T-Pain. Whatever. Right before the Christmas break, Thane had to get his wisdom teeth pulled. And do you want to talk about that experience at all? It's kind of some people have walked it. I've never had it done.
I'm going to tell you, I had it scheduled to be done when I was 14, and I chickened out.
And how old are you now?
51. So bad news, good news. You hear the stories. Well, it's not any easier the older you get. Well, I feel like I'm about as old as I could get. And they tell me, yeah, you got to do this. I'm like, I got to do this. So we did it. What an interesting event. I don't remember the ride home. I don't remember
I remember more of your ride home than you do because you called me.
It sounds like I made some phone calls.
You FaceTime me.
Why wouldn't I?
It was epic.
Oh, my goodness. I did make a video because my daughters wanted a video. Mm-hmm. What else did I called you? I called Addie.
Is that a video we should share on one of the comments of this podcast? Or
I may have cursed.
Damage control wasn't too
bad. Once. But yeah, no, it was fun. Yeah, shoot, I don't care. Share it. I'm not opposed to putting myself out there as a goofball. I mean,
I know. Yeah.
I don't even remember doing it, so I could just deny it, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't me.
Yeah. I just, that was fun. Early morning guide trip. It was a Friday. And it was the day after, Drew, we had the Slush Fest 2022. And I did it again the next day. And it's 8:30 in the morning. My client and I are getting ready. And my phone rings and it's Thaner. FaceTime. I'm like, why is he? It's Wisdom Teeth Day. I picked that thing up so quick. It is everything you see on TV. So. Well, that's cool. So that's behind you. So that was kind of a long-winded way of talking about steak because I mentioned steak and thought about your wisdom teeth pulled. But another thing we do a lot at Clam and Ice Team, which I think is awesome, is we do a lot of cooking.
Oh yeah,
right. We had the Crappie Chronicles on. He did a great crappie recipe. But Thane's been a big part of us doing some of this stuff with Traeger and smoking and cooking lunches for our company. I tell you what, when it comes to fishing in the outdoors, like one thing I've seen in the last few years, and I'm probably just naive to it, but I learned our same audience loves cooking. Loves cooking meat, smoking food, cooking fish, doing whatever outdoor recipes that every time we kind of gravitate down that path once in a while as a company, we see a lot of attention. And I know that's a big thing in your wheelhouse too, is we do a lot of cooking, smoking different foods. Your broccoli is world-class. The fans are probably laughing at me because I broccoli world class. I'm telling you, if I was a kid and I knew how to make broccoli like Thane did, I would have eaten a lot more broccoli.
I can't agree more. The only way I would eat broccoli until I learned this way of making it, and I'd love to give credit to the person that showed it to me, and I cannot for the life of me remember them right now, so I apologize if you're listening. But yeah, the only way I was eating broccoli prior to that day was if it had way more cheese than broccoli going on.
Yeah.
That was the only way it was happening.
You want to share your secret?
I don't care. Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely.
Tell them how you cook that thing.
It's just a bunch of broccoli florets. It typically works better if you get them fresh out of the produce section. Then chop it up, kind of toss it in olive oil, lemon pepper, a little bit of garlic salt, and then your favorite steak seasoning. And then the key to the whole thing is you want like a vegetable basket is probably the best way to do it. It's kind of like a pan that has holes in it. And I'll do this on the gas grill just because I kind of want...
It's like an ice scoop.
Excuse me?
Like an ice scoop.
Big ice scoop.
Oh, yeah, a metal one. Yeah.
Except for the shape of a standard oven
ice
dish.
Scoop. But yeah. No,
it's
you're
exactly
right.
what it is.
Yeah. Kind of like an ice scoop, what he said. But anyway... No, he's right. He's right in that it's a container that has holes in it, right? Bingo. So once it's all in there doing its thing, you get it on that. And I like the gas grill from the standpoint that you can crank the heat up to where the flames are kind of licking the bottom of the broccoli florets, if you will. And you want to crisp them up, burn them, doesn't matter, brown, crispy, and the key is crisp. The key is to get them crispy. And then when it's done, when they're done, it's amazing.
Yeah, they are very good. You know, I mean, I know our company eats them a couple times a year, and I love them and brag about them. So there you go. If you're listening, there's a broccoli. If you're listening and you have kids,
oh, buddy,
absolutely. I mean, I think the first time I was going to eat it, you made a comment to me like, "Well, do you like buttered popcorn?" Mm-hmm. And I'm like, "What?" Well, then you like my broccoli, and there's truth to that. Mm-hmm. You eat it, it's really good. So I would say listen to what Thane said, and my mom maybe or may not be listening. Man, you missed the boat, 30 years ago when I was 10 years old trying to not eat broccoli, and there you go. So that's awesome. So one thing we really wanted to hit on a little bit today was kind of do a little recap on the 22 season, a bit from the show's perspective, some things that have happened maybe over the last few weeks. Drew hit on a great point about we got a lot of things moving in the social media world. On YouTube and partnerships. There's so much going on that if we can be a caveat for our listeners to learn about some of these things they may not know about, I think that'd be really cool. But first and foremost, for everyone that came out to the shows, can't thank you enough. I know a lot of our listeners stopped out at whether it was Ramsey, Blaine, Sioux Falls, Fargo, the big St. Paul Ice Fishing Show, Duluth, one of the retail stores to see a pro staffer. I mean, I can't even think. I looked at my chart with our pro staff blanketing the ice belt and working events. We had over 800 appearances.
Wow.
That is the most we've ever had. So there's a lot going on this year in the world of ice fishing at shows and events and stores, and people just getting excited about it. So for anyone that stopped out to one of those, thank you so much. We did shoot some podcasts at some of these. That was super fun. We shot one at Ramsey. We did one at Blaine.
2 at St.
Sioux
Paul.
Falls, 2 at St. Paul.
Yeah.
We had a lot of stuff going on. So the shows were great. We love it. We love our fans. That's honestly why we even do this podcast. We don't do the podcast to listen to each other. Drew, Thane, and I talk to ourselves all the time. We do this for our listeners and that sort of stuff. So for those of you that hit us up in the last week asking, is it done? It's not done.
No,
we just took a break. Yeah, we had Christmas. We had New Year's. We needed to take a little break and a breather and be respectful.
Decompress a little bit. We were thinking about doing a podcast before, but we just got so busy. And it was good to take a break. Yeah, it was nice for all of us. So we're back. We're going to have a more regular routine again, get some more guests on here and that kind of stuff. Drew, I mean, you talked about we have so many great partnerships in the YouTube world. Do you want to chat about some of those? Yeah, I mean, over the Christmas break, I never had it. Normally, I'll sometimes flick on the TV and start watching, random ice fishing YouTube, and I'll be like, oh, there's Bartusek and the Crappie Chronicles, or there's Sobe, and then over Christmas, I'm like, I actually have time to do this now. Yeah. When I get home from work, I'm not like, oh, I need to go sit down and watch an hour-long YouTube video. I'm like, I'm just going to decompress from ice fishing, right?
Right.
But I got to do that a little bit, even this week some, and I was like, whoa, Sobe's in this freaking airboat with Gage down on the river catching these perch that look like they're from Lake Cascade.
That looks so fun.
I know, right?
Could they get another stripe on one of those perch, by the way?
Those things were fat.
They're fat, and they had 11 stripes. I'm like,
so did you see Gens and that crew just went out too with Adam Christensen yesterday?
Yeah, I saw that. So there's guys doing that. I mean, Sobe's out there. The Crappie Chronicles are on episode 6. I felt like that just happened quick, right? Adam talks to us all the time, but
2-pounders.
I know. Did you see that text last night when he said they're just they're in the UP, and I'm like, oh, what's Pincala making some crappie pasties? He's like, did you read my mind? How do you know that? We're literally doing it right now. So we're not sharing the secret because this episode that we're filming won't come out till next week, and I assume that their pasty recipe will be out by then. But
and Barb is crushing fish in the UP.
Oh yeah, yep. Barb Carey was out there with a bunch of folks wrecking them.
Giants.
Yep.
But
Barb crushes. Devoted just started last night. John and Ashley, that's been a long time in the makings, and they're finally up and running. And
that one looks cool. That one I think is going to be
going
really cool.
Bi-weekly, so every other week you can check out Devoted. Whereas the Crappie Chronicles and Sobe, they're more they're more every other day, maybe a couple times a week posting.
Pretty aggressive.
Whereas the Holmgrens Devoted, they're going more for almost like a TV show style setup. Yeah. every other week. So they got 12 episodes coming. So that'll be cool.
And we teased that at on our most recent podcast.
Yep.
We had John and Ashley on.
House,
so now if you're listening to this, you can go watch episode 1.
Yeah. And aside from that, like everyone's on the ice now. Mm-hmm. Like no matter where you're at, well, maybe not in the southern.
They're trying to be
part
on
of the belt,
ice.
and everyone's posting stuff too. Like if you're friends with a lot of the Clam pros or follow on social media, it's like every other scroll, I'm like, oh, someone's fishing. I'm at the office. Someone's fishing. I'm at the office. Yep. Someone's fishing. I'm at the office.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, there's people all over the place, and the epicenter of ice fishing here in the Midwest has got, I would say, fishable ice for sure. Mm-hmm. You know, you look at some of our guys and gals that are in maybe Ohio, maybe some fringe states out as you go east. I know I saw, Jinx, Michael Jasinski in Connecticut.
Catching 2-pound crappies.
In his boat.
Yeah, in a boat?
Yeah. Oh, he was in his boat?
He was in
I
his
didn't
boat.
even read that fast. I was like, 2-pound crappie, I'm jealous.
Yeah.
Next person.
He's like, oh, I still have to be my boat. We just lost the little bit of ice we have, but it's okay because I got like a 16-inch crappie that was like 2.25 pounds. So, I mean, I feel bad for those guys. Jinxie, if you're listening, man, I feel bad for you. I know how important ice fishing is, and we can't control it. So there's two spectrums to what we're seeing right now. You're seeing that kind of atmosphere, right, where there's nothing. Mm-hmm. And then you come to where we are, and you look outside that window, and you kind of go, a reset wouldn't be all that bad, because we're looking at least here in the Twin Cities, the metro area, we're looking at 8 to 10 inches of ice, and we're looking at 10 to 16 inches of snowy, wet slush.
Yeah, and I would say you could have areas that are getting closer to 20 to 22 inches of snow sitting on the ground or on the ice, and man alive, does that make for some interesting endeavors. It's
gnarly. And I'll tell you what, I mean, Drew and I were talking this morning, and it's been decades. I mean, we referenced it to the UPL, like 21 years of this league going on. Never have we experienced this early. Now, we have a March event once in a while where it's been snowing all winter and we deal with some stuff, right? Because generally speaking, that slush exists because it gets warm out. We got 15 inches of snow, and it gets warm out, so everything gets soupy. Well, right now, we're just dealing with, we don't have the thick enough ice to support it. We got a little bit of weird mixture rain that came down. So we're dealing with some stuff as ice anglers that you might not be accustomed to. But what I'll tell you, and talking with Lucas, our sales manager here, and, I'll tell you what, like it shouldn't scare ice anglers, in my opinion, because you always want to check ice conditions. Safety in this sport is always a premium, right? So, but, where we live here, our ice conditions are pretty good. I'm not concerned right now that I can't go out there walking around, or if I can get my ATV out or snow dog or a snowmobile, right? But people get scared off by slush. And what I'm telling people, I guess my point is don't be scared by it. Don't let that determine your decision to go, hey, tomorrow on Saturday, I'm not going ice fishing. Mm-hmm. Case in point is what I would consider instead is maybe you don't get to fish the spot in the lake you want to fish. We do it all the time. We're always strategizing. Oh man, like what's another lake we could hit? Is there a spot closer to an access where if I got to hoof it in by foot, I'm not walking a half a mile? So what I would encourage our listeners to do is don't get discouraged at these conditions. We can't control it. Look at other opportunities that exist. Go, you know what? Instead of Lake A, because I'll tell you what, my spot is 3/4 of a mile off the axis, maybe go look at Lake D. Because, that's right, I got a spot pretty close to that one public road where I can rock out 50 yards to a weed line, and there's some fish there. So that would be my advice is don't get discouraged. I know we look outside as ice anglers and go, oh my gosh, this is a lot of snow. It's going to be wet. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to be a little wet. That's part of the game. But, you got the good gear, you got the ice armor, you got the Sub-Zero X boots, you get out there, you get after it, and you just kind of improvise a bit to get on some fish.
I think what ticks me off most about the snow is how hard it is just to walk around. Like you take for granted lifting your feet up, when you got to pull it out of, 12 inches of snow versus just walking across glare ice. Like it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
You were a hockey player, Drew. You don't remember your folks in the stands and pick up your feet. Move your feet.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. Now when I'm ice fishing, that's what I catch, man.
Right?
It's like mashed potatoes. You get stuck.
Yeah. If I wanted to work that hard, I'd be in an ice fishing league.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we'll see.
That's coming up.
Yeah, we got our first event for our squad this weekend, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah,
but
definitely limits your mobility.
Yeah.
Like Matt was saying, go to your juice.
Yeah.
Now's the time just to post up on the hot spot if you got it, because walking around with your Vexlar or whatever else you have, your auger, not as easy
right
as it normally
right.
is.
But you know, another thing too is just because we're in January doesn't mean you can just go drive on the ice.
Oh.
And I had this conversation the other day with a bunch of people in my neighborhood, because if you go to like Lake Minnetonka right now, there's some bays where there's trucks driving all over the place. And if you go measure that ice thickness, you're talking 10 to 12 inches. And it makes me nervous in the sport of ice fishing and somebody that kind of lives in that world, because in my opinion, you're just kind of asking for it. And there's some vehicles starting to go down, right? And to me, the assumption is, well, it's January, our ice should be fine. That is not how this game works. You know, the ice is not dependent on the time of year. It doesn't mean because it's January, you're going to have, 18 inches of ice. So with this snow, and what this snow will do to the ice is it will insulate that ice. And with all the snow we got the last couple of weeks, one thing I noticed over Christmas break, I had a slew of days off that I took off. I went to Lake of the Woods for a few days. That was awesome. Didn't have to worry about slush. I drove my truck out. I'll tell you what, that was nice. But around the Twin Cities, I hit a handful of lakes. Some of them I hit about 11 days apart. Same lake, 11 days apart. During the heart of the end of December, right? Winter. We didn't even gain an inch of ice.
And that was the cold snap, too.
And it
was super duper.
We barely gained an inch of ice if we're lucky. And what that shows you is how much of an insulator this snow is. So if anyone's listening that really follows ice fishing, and you kind of sigh at this snow, that's why they're doing it. You have the conditions, the slush, the walking around. That's no fun. But the guys that are really sighing are going, this is not good for ice growth. It's one thing to have 18 inches of ice and go, okay, well, if I stay at 18, 19, 20, whatever. But when we're sitting at 8, 10 inches of ice and we want to get these ice castles out and we want to do more things and get more people excited, you want that ice to grow. So that's kind of the dynamic of what we're seeing here, is that we're seeing a little bit of stall in this, but we'll get some cold snap weather again. It'll start to freeze up again. It always does. You can still make ice through thicker snow. It just doesn't form as fast.
So I was on Mille Lacs last weekend, and I could not believe, I thought there was going to be a lot of snow out there, because there was a lot of snow up north before this. I mean, there was like 16 inches of snow, and I went to the cabin a couple weeks ago and had to snow blow my way in. But anyways, on Mille Lacs, I'm prepared for a lot of snow. Got out there. I mean, there was spots where there was nothing but straight ice, and then there was other spots that had 2-foot snow drifts that went for 50 yards.
Yeah.
And I think those spots where the snow drifts are, like, that's where you're going to find your sketchy ice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And no one knows about it now because it's all, there's a foot of snow up there again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you are in a truck or something bombing across the lake at some point, like, just remember, if you have 14 inches here, well, there might be a spot where a snow drift was that you'll have who knows however many less inches there.
Right. And I wonder how much of that up north snow blew off like that.
Not smaller lakes, not as much.
Really?
Big lakes like Mille Lacs, I was shocked. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, like I can almost wear my ice skates out here in some spots.
Because you guys remember the slush fest that Thursday before my teeth came out. That was gross. But that was a super crazy heavy wet snow.
Yeah.
I was curious.
We only
if
had
maybe,
like 5 inches of ice at that point too.
I was curious if maybe up north it was a little colder, maybe not as much moisture in that snow.
I hit some smaller lakes too, and I didn't find any slush other than in bays that always have slush because they're like protected by the wind, The snow just stays there, shady bays. But other than that, I didn't see any slush.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And fishing's solid. I mean, I'll tell you what, like the guys and gals that are getting out there, they're finding some fish. I mean, we're seeing a little bit of a weird little funk in the metro. And I say that because our water levels are down. We're seeing the lowest level water levels that I think we can record in at least my lifetime. Like Minnetonka, for example, if you drive around the lake, you'll still see boats on the boat list because they couldn't get them off this fall.
Yeah.
They just threw covers on them and left them. So, that does change the dynamic of a fishery. And we're seeing that right now. And I've talked to a lot of anglers locally that are like, I'm going to my shallow weed beds that I love to fish, and the fish just aren't even there. Like I'm cameraing it, they're gone. And I'm like, well, how deep is it? Oh, it's like 3-4 feet. I'm like, how deep was it last year? Well, that's what's weird. It was like 5, 6, 7 feet deep. It's like, yeah, the lake's down 30 inches.
It's too skinny.
It changes the dynamic. And what I'm seeing here, not to give you a major tip, is I'm seeing a lot of these, especially crappies, they're staying in the basin where these shallow water, good weed bed spots are just not loading up like they usually do. You're seeing a lot of these fish stay in the basin and they're moving quick. They're roaming, they're chasing, they're dodging, they're ducking, they're weaving. And that's where, as anglers, you just need to be willing to adapt. I've said the word improvise already once about maybe the lake you fish, but also how we fish. Take that into consideration. So, that could also determine where you go. You may go, you know what, all my bites in this lake were up in these shallow weed beds. We fished the lake the day we went out as a team, Slush Fest 2022, and we kind of got our butts. I'm not going to say we got our butts whooped.
Hey, I caught a perch.
I ate it. That perch. And we kind of honestly fished some memories, kind of did this, did that, and we got humbled because that lake was low. I went back to that same lake the next day, having noticed and used that information, and said, where's it a little deeper? So there's some different bottom content. What's something different that we're not trying? And still didn't find the crappies, but we found the bluegills, and they were nice and it was fun. But those are just things you have to think about as anglers. It's not always year to year, case by case, right? You have to look at it and go, man, and we're seeing this now with these teams pre-fishing for these tournaments. They're like, I don't need to pre-fish. I fished that lake 30 times. Knock yourself out. I think you need to. So that's just some good rule of thumb.
Anything I've learned from watching people fish a lot the last few years, it's just you can never rule anything out.
Right.
You can drive across the road into the lake that's almost connected, and the bite could be completely different for who knows why.
100%. What the heck? Was it Independence?
Maybe.
UPL a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And Lanky.
Caught him in 2 feet of water.
Right in the weeds. Absolutely buried in him.
Yeah. The story about that, anyone that knows Sean Lanky, he's goofier than Thane. And Sean's a good dude, funny guy, good angler.
Oh yeah.
Good stick. And he's cashed a lot of checks. And what Thane's referencing is one year we had an event on a metro lake, and Sean literally walked, and this was midwinter. Mm-hmm. This wasn't like March, where in March sometimes those crappies and bluegills go into those pencil reeds, the water starts to flood in. No, this was like our February event, midwinter. And we went in there, and I remember driving up, and I remember saying, oh, Bo, there's Lanky taking a leak. I'm like, you could have at least just gone behind. I remember to myself, because I just know Sean's personality. He's just a happy-go-lucky dude, right? Never means to offend anybody. He's a fun human being. And I'm like, dude's just taking a leak right in the open. And then I'm like, man, he's got a rod. And wait a second, he's fishing. And they cracked the code. They caught these fish in as little as 18 inches of water, and they were by far the biggest fish.
And nobody would have guessed it. I mean, it was the wrong time of year. Nobody had even checked that shallow. So, sometimes it pays to.
Whenever I go out on the lake, just by myself or with friends, fun fishing, and we're like not catching anything, but I know the fish are in the lake, right? Like they're stuck there. I'm always like, God, what would like a UPL guy be doing right now, or MMA guy? I'm like, well, they would just Swiss cheese the entire lake. Like they'd be like, well, they're not in this hole, so go to a different one. And when they ran out of the holes to fish, they'd probably go up shallow, or they hit a weed line. And by the end of it, like you're gonna land on them.
I watched you do that one time with Danny's auger.
Yeah,
exactly. I went and I tried fishing underneath a lay down tree, almost like I'd probably be flipping a 3/4 ounce, tungsten in there in the summer, and boom, hit the tree and didn't catch a fish, but.
It's funny because
10 feet outside that tree, there was crappies. I was like, this is nuts. Like, there's got to be one under the tree.
Yeah.
We're right next to it.
That's where the biggest one was.
Probably. I just couldn't get there.
Yeah, he scared it out of there. And it's funny, Drew made a comment about, like, sometimes you do what it takes to catch fish, right? Drew is, like, notorious for catching our biggest fish and always a walleye when we go pan fishing. Like, you've done it multiple years. Like, I think this morning you even joked, like, all I need is a panfish.
I was like, I went to Mille Lacs, didn't catch a thing. God, I should have had my panfish jig and pretend I was trying to catch a crappie.
And you catch big walleyes. So, and that's funny because, like, I love the bonus fish. I think it's so cool. I think, and my kids do too. Like, and what we call a bonus fish is the fish you're not targeting that you catch, right? And whether you're targeting bluegills and you catch a pike or a bass, right? It's fun. Or you're targeting crappies and you catch a white bass, or you're doing this and you catch a walleye, or even in the summertime, you're throwing a Ned rig and you hook a 42-inch muskie. I think bonus fishes create memories, and bonus fishes, in my opinion, are some of the things, even as, adult anglers like we are, keep us super excited and entertained. And, I just saw a kid on social media land, it was a mid 40-inch muskie on a tip up on Tonka. And he just ran to the tip up like he was expecting another hammer handled pike, which hammer handle by definition is skin lanky, probably not like lanky, 22 inch northern pike, and the kid pulls up a mid 40-inch muskie. Like, you want to talk about a cool experience?
It's like throwing a frog in the lily pads and catching a however big.
That happens. Yeah.
How many people catch muskies on Minnetonka in the winter by accident?
There's a decent amount, and there's a handful of spots where I would say, and this was this spot where this kid caught it is where I hear of a lot of them caught, and I'm not gonna out of respect explain where that spot is, but it happens, and you look at a lake like Rush, East and West Rush Lake, for example, right? Really expansive, lots of weeds, great place to hide for fish. That's why these fish continue to boom in there, but it's littered with muskies. It's another one of those lakes where you hear of a lot of muskies caught. If somebody says, I caught a big muskie sight fishing for bluegill or something, I can most of the time go, catch it on Rush? How'd you know? So like there are some lakes that they're notorious for.
Filming the underwater stuff on Minnetonka last year, and it seemed like every 20 minutes we'd see a muskie just casually roll through, but they wanted nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, they're super cool. Like we used to,
they go dormant. I'm like, how do you get that big by not eating in the winter?
Sight fish crappies in the late spring on sugar.
Yeah,
and literally look down the hole, and it's like all of a sudden one of these big jokers just slowly slides in there. It's like he's smiling. It's like,
and they don't eat dead bait.
Nope.
So like a pike,
really?
They will. I've never heard of it. They will only eat live bait. They don't eat dead bait. Like pike will surface will cruise under the ice, and they'll eat your crappies. Muskies don't. If anyone catches a muskie, they're actively jigging, or it's biting the bluegill they're fighting up to their hole. So don't. That's why you don't hear of many muskies caught on tip ups.
Yeah,
they're actively feeding. They don't bite dead bait like pike do. Pike are gluttons for punishment. They eat anything. They eat a hot dog. Now maybe you said bougie. Never tried a filet mignon. Pike like hot dogs and brats. Maybe a muskie wants a filet.
I don't know, but some of those muskie baits cost as much as a filet mignon. So what the heck is the difference at that point?
We got a guest joining us right now. A lot of you know who he is. Mike Raetz. Mike has been a part of this industry for a long time. Mike's one of those guys, like other guys on our Clam staff, that came to us on the pro staff. So Mike, before he took a job for Clam, like Thane, in customer service. Now you don't work in customer service, was on our pro staff. So Mike's a fishing guide, tournament fisherman. You run your own bass fishing league. You do seminars all over the place. This dude has fished in the leagues I run, has cast a bunch of checks. Such a well-rounded angler. You catch everything that swims. So we got Mikey Raetz joining us, the Raetz Meister. We got all kinds of nicknames for Mike too. We won't get into all the stories behind it, but Mike Raetz joins us. He guides West Metro. He does a lot of fishing up by Leech Lake. He chases giant crappie. Dude, you catch. I hate watching you on social media because your crappies are always bigger than the ones I catch. Big bluegills, all that kind of stuff. So, Mikey, welcome to the Ice Team Podcast.
Thanks,
man.
I appreciate you guys having me.
So, you've been busy. So, a little backstory on Mike, quick, about what he does here. And for those of you listening, you can, if you see him, you probably owe him a cocktail or something, although he doesn't drink. But he builds and runs the build line for all of our fish traps. And what that means is if you go to a store, let's say Cabela's, Bass Pro, Shields, Thorne Brothers, it don't matter. There's built fish traps. You and your team build every single one of those.
Yeah, we do, depending on the season. This year we did just over 900. Normal years, it could be anywhere from, 12 to 1,500 houses. Just
That's
really
crazy.
depends on that. Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
Just watched him build one today.
Yeah.
The Minnesota Teen Challenge fellows were over here, and they won a Voyager, right?
Yep.
Was it part of their whole deal to have you help them build it, or is that?
Yeah, well, Dave came down to me the other day, and that was it was his idea.
Yeah.
It's like, I think it'd be really cool. These kids are into this stuff. They went to a welding shop here, a couple of weeks ago, and now some of them want to weld. So I figured, why not have them come in, build the fish house, and maybe that'll steer something in. So we talked about engineering, building things. I really pushed that sense of like I do when I'm on the build line, and I tell my guys, build this house like your name's going to be stamped on the side of it.
Yeah.
Build the house to the absolute best that it can be. I said, do it right the first time or don't do it at all.
That's what I love about you, Mike.
Great advice.
That's what I love about you, Mike. Like when you worked for me in customer service, to a fault, you took everything so serious and so personal, And I would agree, each and every scenario was, you treated it as though this was your company.
Yep.
And
it shines through.
It shines through, and the passion that you have for not just the company, but for the sport and the industry. I'm telling you what, man, you can't instill that in people. They have to have it, and that's why I'm so thankful that you do work here.
Mm-hmm.
And customer service, I think, was a little bit frustrating for you for that very reason. Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely where you need to be with this company, and we're better for having you there. So thank you.
Yeah.
And I miss working with you.
Yeah.
As close as we did, but
you can come back to build fish
think-
house.
oh yeah, I know where you're at.
I'd
I'd find you.
like fish house building seminars put on by Raetz once a month or something for people who can't figure a thing out.
Oh, yeah. I think
Honestly,
Thing to do. I got some tips and tricks. I mean,
I told you about my one buddy who put drywall screws through his canvas because
he was telling me
figure
about
the
that
U-channel.
today.
I'm like, oh my! And I tried picking it up, and all my hands are just shredded. Right? I'm like, Jesus, Donnie, what did you do to this thing? And he goes, I just had to. I don't know. I gave up, and I just took the easy way out. And I'm like, well, I don't think Raetz would have been too happy with this
Raetz
one.
would be whooping you.
Yeah.
I'd be going nuts right now.
So when I first took the job at Clam, and 11, 12 years ago, one of the first things we were told we had to do was build a fish trap.
Oh, yeah.
And I was on the pro staff for 10 years prior to taking a job, so I knew how to build one. So I'm like, this will be a piece of cake. And but that was funny because that was a prerequisite of anyone that took the job. So when you took the job, you must, on your first week in the job, you went and built a fish trap. And for guys like any of the four of us, it was like probably just, okay, we've done this before, whatever. But it was somewhat entertaining, with all due respect to some of our employees, when they would get back there and build. Because this is the testament to you, Mike. They're not hard to build. You have to follow direction. Some people struggle with that, right, on following direction. And you even provide pictures.
Yeah.
There's even pictures in the instructions. But there are some nuances, like you said, to do it and do it different. And the cool thing, too, about fish traps, let's say houses in general right now, and you've kind of led this for us on the marketing side, is tricking them out.
Yep.
So it's fun to build it, but then you have all these accessories, and you can things we call trick your trap, lights and battery brackets and stuff like that. So I don't know if you want to touch on some of that a bit and let the consumers know, maybe a couple of your favorite things that you like to do to your fish trap. You fish tournaments, you guide. What are a couple things, if these listeners are going, you know what, I wouldn't mind tricking my trap with a couple ideas. What are a few things you think are must-haves?
I'm gonna jump over you guys just for one quick second. You talked about your first week on the job. What was it like the first day on the job, Matt? Was there anything special you had to do? Because I believe you both have something special.
Well,
We have a rookie party here.
no, my
Little bit.
first day on the job is I was a full-time fishing guide, worked at Thorne Brothers, and Steve had hired me, Steve and Nick, and I remember I asked Steve, it was like the day before I had to come in, and I kind of did something to Mike too, and so you can blame Steve for you, because he did this to me. Yeah. I think mine was a lot worse. So Steve's like, oh, I'm like, do I need to bring anything? Am I missing out? And he goes, no, you just have to bring your own office chair. I'm like, okay. I thought that was weird, but I'm thinking, I've never had a desk job. I'm a fisherman, right? So I literally went to, I don't remember, Target or someplace, Walmart, and I bought a computer office chair. And I got it in a box. And I show up, we were at Medina at the time, and I show up, first day in the job, new guy, and I knew most everyone there because at the time I was handling the social media, I was on the pro staff doing seminars, events, so I kind of knew everybody to the most part, but I walk in with this chair, and I'm definitely dressed probably a little more, you guys know me, if I'm not wearing a hat, no one knows who I am. And I come walking in, I got this chair, and at the time I remember Steve was not there, Nick was not there, Smitty was not there, it was just Roger Sherping, who was the current president. And oh, hey, Matt, welcome. How you doing? Let me show you your offices. So I'm carrying this box. It's not light. And I'm being introduced to people. Hey, Matt, this is customer service. This is accounting. I'm like, hey, trying to shake their hands. I'm carrying this box. Finally, I get to my office, which, of course, would be the last office on the right. And I get in there, and the first thing I see is a desk and a chair. And I sat my chair down, and I looked at Roger. I'm like, what gives? And I'm like, there's a chair here. And he's like, yeah, I thought it was kind of weird you were carrying one around. Why'd you bring an office chair? And I literally just closed my eyes and I said, yeah. And Roger looks at me and he goes, Steve? I'm like, yeah, I'll get him back. So then fast forward to Mr. Raetz a few years later when we hire him in customer service. I told this dude he's got to wear a tie to the first day on the job.
Oh, you did not.
I was freaking out.
It was a suit. You said he had to wear a suit.
Yeah.
Oh my God, dust it off.
I was literally that
suit.
I texted Matt and I go, dude, I don't have any of this stuff. I worked at a golf course. I was an assistant superintendent. I mean, I got grass stains on my khakis if I want me to wear those, but I don't know what to wear. It's like, no, I'm just kidding with you. Don't worry.
Oh, he let you off the hook.
Yeah. Well, when he told me he had actually go purchase, I figured he had something in his closet he'd throw on that looks funny. Because Matt Rebar, anyone knows Matt Rebar, was the shipping manager at Thorne Brothers. And I helped hire him when I was working there. And he had to come in for an interview. And Matt had fished in the UPL. Do you remember Rebar? Mm-hmm. Way back in the day. Yep. And we were looking to hire somebody in shipping. And Matt's like, well, Matt and his family own Duke's, which makes poutine at the state fair. They're the poutine booth.
And thankfully, they're a long ways away from the Clam booth because so good. I would live there.
And he's like, well, you know what? I don't do anything in the wintertime. You know, I'll come work in shipping and receiving. It sounds fun. And it wasn't about the money. It's just, you got a good dude that wants to be a part. So then he's like, well, set it up. So I set up an interview and he's like, anything I need to know? I said, no, just make sure you dress up. And it's a big deal that Josh, the past owner, that you have a tie on. So Rebar rolls into the office for an interview. No, I take that back. He walks in and we get paged. You know, hey, Matt, hop on line 2. And I hop on. And then it was Nelly. And Nelly's like, you got some kooky guy in a bow tie. Some dude wearing a bow tie here to see you and Josh. I'm like, a bow tie? I'm like, well, I don't know, send him up. And here comes Rebar in a bow tie, dress pants, and the look on Josh's face. Josh looks at him, looks at me, and you can see he's like, who is this? And the second Matt sits down and sees like me in a hat and Josh in a hat and a pair of shorts in the dead of winter, and then Josh goes, what's up with the tie? I could feel the stare from Rebar, like, really, dude? So to this day, every time I see him, like, hey, buddy, you got your bow tie?
Oh, boy.
But you got to have fun, you know?
Heck yeah.
I'll tell you a good story with that. Like, so this is where I thought my karma was kicking in when you did that with me. So a backstory to before I worked at Clam, I was an assistant superintendent at a golf course called Pine Ridge in Sartell. And we'd get a lot of young kids during the summertime. And so our big thing to them is you need to go home, you need to watch Caddyshack, and you need to come back tomorrow because you're getting quizzed. And if you do not answer every single question correctly, we can't hire you. And so these kids would, I swear, they'd watch it 5-6 times. They would be able to recite the movie better than we would the next morning. And they'd walk in and be like, I'm ready to go. Okay, do you want to go fill in the T's? Wait, we don't have to do that? No, we were just joking with you, dude, but you probably should learn it.
Yeah.
What the?
Absolutely. You got
Caddyshack is an absolute classic.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I completely derailed your guys' conversation, but I had
No, I was just going to ask him about, you know, some of his favorite trick or trap accessories and things. If somebody was to go, you know, I want to add 2 or 3 things to my fish house, what would they be?
Yeah. First off, foremost, are rod holders.
Yeah.
I love that 4 position, especially with that clam lock. That makes it even better now because I have clam locks mounted onto my snowmobile, and I have them mounted in the fish house. So that's a 2-for-1 deal for me. So when I'm going onto the lake, especially when you're using longer rods, because really nobody wants a 45-inch rod case or something of that nature. And I'm a long rod guy. I really like that. Like the Jason Mitchell meat stick's one of my favorites on that. And so being able to have that 4-position rod holder, I can take it from my snowmobile and put it in the fish house. So all my rods are set up beautifully. I don't have to worry about things, and it goes back and forth all day long. It's a kind of a 2-for-1 deal. And if I had to jump into something else, I would definitely say something like the corner consoles. Mm-hmm. I think that corner console is phenomenal. You can put your tools in there, your jigs, your pop, your wallet, whatever you want. It's all on your side. I like mounting those in there. I think those are a really cool thing. And then also the organizer, the small and the large. Something cool with that is your propane. That's the biggest thing that I look at with that. I'm not a big 20-pound tank guy.
Me neither.
I like bringing smaller 1-pounders with me. That's just kind of my deal. But the fact of being able to have that organizer in there, when I'm traveling from spot to spot, I don't have those tanks banging around inside the house, moving around. I can set them right inside that large organizer, that small organizer. They're safe, they're secure. But then I've got my tackle in there. I've got all my tools. Everything's at my reach. So being able to have that, I think that organizer is phenomenal. I mean, for me, those are 3 things that really, really stand out. And they're simple, but I think if I had to pick one out of them all, that rod holder's the deal.
Yeah. It's funny because, like, I honestly thought you'd mention some kind of light right away, but I also understand why you didn't, because I also know how you fish. Mm-hmm. And I think it's interesting. I think our listeners could take a good tip on the corner console. And I would say if you asked most people that question, that would probably not be their answer. And I think it's because they don't understand the value of it. Mm-hmm. It seems pretty simple, and people don't realize it. But I'll tell you what, when you're sitting inside a one-person fish trap and you're looking around for places to set stuff, it's not always conducive, right? You have a sled, you have an undercarriage like that, the hammock, but to have a corner console for your pliers, your wallet, your soda, like you said, I think that goes a long way. And I think that's one of the accessories that probably doesn't get enough love.
No, and two, changing out stuff throughout the day instead of trying to go and find, put it back in your face. You grab one piece, a drop kick out of this one. Well, this is your drop kick box, but then your half-at box is still in the back of your bag. Instead of me dinking around and looking for that stuff, I can just put it in that cup holder.
Yeah.
All of my stuff's right there. It's not getting thrown around.
Just like your open water boat cup holders.
Full of plastics.
Oh, yeah.
So many dead plastics.
Plastics
and hooks
everywhere in that thing. I have to clean it out. Thane has that story when he's on a Tonka and everything. It was literally barreled to the front one. So I purchased Matt's boat 5, 6, 7 years ago, something like that. It was a while ago.
Yeah, probably 7 years ago.
Yeah,
that thing is fast.
Yeah. So I used that little day box up front as all my plastics. And Thane had needed it for a guide trip that day. He didn't get his boat in or something like that. And I totally forgot to take him out of there. And that thing was mounded over. And he hit a wave.
It was a Friday afternoon trip, and I was following Scott Siebert back to the landing behind him. And you hit your typical Minnetonka 3-footers. And the next thing I know, because Matt's old Crestliner is an absolute rocket ship, and it just took off for the moon. And I'm up in the air, and I'm like, holy crap, this is going to come down. It came down, wham, and next thing you know, I'm literally dodging D-bombs and freaking sweet chigger craws and sweet beavers flying, hitting me in the face. I mean, it was like, oh my. It looked like confetti.
Thane figured out some of my favorite plastics that day.
Well, yeah, they were hitting me in the face.
Got to taste them. Yeah. Knows what a fish sees.
I told him, I'm like, sorry I cleaned out your boat, Mike.
It was great. Talking a little more, I mean, you've been fishing a lot. You've been catching a lot too. We just talked before you hopped on here about conditions right now on the lakes, snow and ice and that kind of stuff. What are some of the things you're seeing, or what are some tips you have? We talked about maybe looking at a better lake option where you're not have to go as far. We talked about don't let the slush be a deterrent from you going out fishing, things like that. So what are some other things you're seeing out in the West Metro, and which can be relatable for a lot of people that are dealing with snow? So what are you seeing for conditions? What's the bite like, and some of that stuff?
Yeah. Ice conditions are pretty good yet. I don't feel we have as much as I think we should at this point. But we're still sitting on 12 to 14 inches, depending on the lake and depending on where you go.
And you're fishing again. So what area would that be in Minnesota?
I would say central for me, so St. Cloud, Annandale, all the way out to Paynesville, Spicer area. I tend to fish more west a lot, but I do enjoy the Annandale area, and then I also travel north too as well. But for that area, I would say, even up to Royalton, chatting with my dad up on Leech Lake. That's where he's at right now. He's up north. He's been up there for a few weeks. They got like an inch of snow off of this. They didn't get much snow compared to like what we got. Right. I know. I told him, I said, I might be heading your way tonight. I don't know. But for us, things were good. They were good up until this big snowfall. And we already still had some slushy spots left. I mean, it wasn't just clean slate. I mean, we were sitting on 5 inches of snow and some areas with slush, but now we got dumped on like 15 inches. We got a lot of snow the other night. I mean, backyard, you go out the door and to the top of the railing is full. I mean, it's plugged with snow. So I think that our conditions are going to change dramatically. I think four-wheelers, if you've got a side-by-side right now with wheels, I don't know that I would just go out and barrel out there and attempt it. I would definitely walk out before. And I'm not saying that because the ice is in bad condition, but the amount of slush and snow that's going to come from this, it's going to make it very, very tough. I think if you've got a wheelhouse, I think your best option right now is to hold off. I think when you drill holes, you're going to find yourself in a big mess unless you have a good plow and you can really push some snow out of your way. So that was one thing that I've been looking at. And, I checked lakes the other night, and they're a mess. I mean, it's going to be nuts for a while. And, as far as the bite goes, boy, I tell you what, I was on one of the lakes. We fished it a number of times in Annandale for the UPL. I got over 15 schools of fish. And do you think I could get a hole over one of them? 30 feet of water, 28 feet down. Now, we were meat hunting that day. I will never tell somebody to go just whack fish that are 2 feet off the bottom and 30 feet of water. So we were trying to, get a meal for the day. And we saw plenty of schools, but we could not get within 30 feet of them, or they would take off like Mach 1. But that's one lake. Other lakes, it's been wild. It's been fun. I fish the horseshoe chain of lakes a lot. I enjoy that place a lot. It's one of my favorite. If you want to know where I'm fishing in the summertime and you want to come say hi, I'm more than likely out in the horseshoe chain every weekend. I love it. It's a very diverse body of water. You can fish anything, anywhere. It's different. It's dirty water, clean water. There's coontail, there's milfoil, there's wood. So
it's smaller Minnetonka.
Really, yeah. I really bit my teeth, and that's really how I learned to fish my style like I do in the summertime, along with the winter, because we got a lot of dirty water lakes. And that was really good fishing. I mean, you were able to get over the pods of fish. They're still moving around a lot. I've noticed that. That's obviously due to pressure. We've had a lot more pressure the past couple of years. But the fish are staying put. So you're going to get to some lakes right now where if you can get over them, great. The bluegills are staying put. It's the crappies that are really moving around right now. And that's in them deeper basins. I mean, one of my favorite things is a weed bed bite. So that's what I tend to look for first. That's where you're going to really be able to zone in on an area and be able to get down on them and fish them and catch them without having to drill and drill and drill and drill and basically push fish out of your area at the end of the day.
I'm seeing, it's funny because we had this brief conversation about some of that before you hopped on, and I'm seeing the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing, and I think what I'm seeing in my areas is the water depth. Everything's down 2-3 feet. So these basin fish, these crappies specifically, like you mentioned too, they're staying in the basin, and they're moving. And just like you said, they're moving extremely fast.
Yep, Mach 1.
Extremely quick. And a lot of anglers are struggling to find their shallow, good crappie weed bites like they have in recent years, because I don't think the fish are there. And I think at least in my area, we're just seeing we had such a drought summer with lack of rain, and the water levels dropped. And some of the lakes I fish, I'll call it the Chisago chain area of lakes, whatever, Minnetonka, there's not as much water feeding these bodies of water like you think. And regardless of that, it's not going to feed much water if we don't have water coming down.
Yep.
So I've seen a lot recently is that these fish are staying in the basins, just like you. They're moving extremely fast, so fast that at times you go, you know what? Screw this.
Yeah.
I'm going to go. I'm not even going to play this game.
Yep. That's what we did. That's it finally got to the point where, I sent Dougie out. I said, 60 feet out that way, and he goes walking. He got within 30 feet of those fish, and I watched him. He made one step, and I watched him take off.
Yeah. I
said, dude, forget it. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore today. I said, we've drilled 50, 60, 70 holes. I said, we haven't got over one of these pods yet. We've been chasing them all over the place, and it
might be a blessing in disguise.
It could be.
Maybe what's happening is some of these fish need a break.
Yeah. Well, that too. A lot of pressure has been put on the lakes this year. And, like you're talking about with the drought, just in perspective here, when we had that big rain this spring, the horseshoe chain was 8 feet above average. 8 feet. By the end of the season, we were 5 feet low.
Yeah.
That's how much water we lost this year.
Massive swing.
It made a big difference. And it's changed a lot of the way things fish. I mean, I had to really, this whole summer too, I had to really change the way I fish on the horseshoe chain. It
showed a bunch of the big bass that you missed.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
AKA logs.
I hope you marked those trees.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, I've got some stuff. I found trees that I never even knew were there because I hit them with the trolling motor coming through.
What company's got that ad? I love that ad. It's the picture, the lake's down, and there's a stump sticking out, and it said, the 5-pounder you missed last year, and it's just a chunk of wood that's now exposed, and oh man, that was a 5-pounder. It's well, it was funny because we have the teams on Chisago this weekend, right?
Yeah.
And one of our teams from down south in Iowa was running around checking spots, And they're like, I found 2 feet of water on some spots that I used to fish that were 5. And I'm like, yeah, the water's down 3 feet. Like you'll lose an auger to some of these spots. He's like, yeah, it's crazy difference. And those are things that you can pay attention to, and some people might not know. So I'm not expecting somebody to roll onto a lake and assume the water's down, especially if you don't fish it. But again, another variable of fishing that I think sometimes is overlooked is some of these factors that we can't control.
Yeah.
Water levels can't control. And it definitely changes, as we've both seen, what the fish do, where they are, and how they act.
Yep. And that, in perfect example for Chisago, I fished lots and lots of tournaments out there. I fished many UPLs.
You won one last year, but it ended up going to someone else because they went to some other tiny lake.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that was fun. It was really cool. We honestly found like what I feel was the spot of the spot out there. It was a ditch that we were hanging off of, and it worked. Most people wouldn't look at this as something good, but I did. I really keyed in on this. The road was not far off where people were driving, and I noticed throughout the time that I was spending in this area that I knew the ditch was there. I knew it was already there, and then it shallows up. And as I was just sitting there that day looking at things, you'd have a truck drive by. And all of a sudden that truck would drive by and my Vexilar would light up. And I'm like, interesting. So what I think was happening is every time something came, those fish would just push, and they would get pushed right into this area.
Yeah.
And,
so they were sitting in or around the plowed road, which is not untypical for a lot of walleye fishing too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yep. And they would move and they'd push in, and I'd look and I'm like, look at all these. I'd watch them on the camera too. And these were the better fish. And I had spent the whole day looking for fish and just like not finding what I like. Like, this isn't what I'm used to seeing out here, and noticing that. And we came back for that tournament for the Frankies, and we sat in 4 holes all day long, and we just ground it out. Not a team came near us. And I think a lot of that is, and I do the same thing too. We look at that stuff like, well, that's just going to make a bunch of noise. We got to be in our own little spot, little area. And if anybody knows Chisago well enough, sometimes that's not always the case.
Right.
I mean, I've had many years where I've went to where I thought was the juice, and they're going to fish there.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, what were they doing? So were they on a piece of structure just off the road, and when they would drive, it would push them, or were they using the road? Because a clear road typically should build ice better than the stuff that's got 2 feet of snow on it.
It will, yeah.
So are they relating to the structure, the underwater structure that's created by that road being thicker ice than the rest of it?
I think they were, and like where I said, where we were sitting, like we were in the...
Don't drill on the road.
No, don't drill on the road. Whatever you do, stay off the road and drill. And we were right at that part of that break where it starts to lift. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I think in my mind, I personally feel like that was like the stop sign for them. They didn't go any farther than that because Sean went, and this is the funny story about this, is we weren't originally even going to fish that spot because Sean went there the day before, and he's like, there ain't a fish there. There's nothing there. Well, he was in 4 feet of water.
We already plugged Lanky a couple times earlier in the podcast.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll talk about something else then. We won't talk about the beard. But yeah, that it was... we're not, that they weren't there and all this stuff. I'm like, well, how deep are you? He's like, well, 4 feet of water. I'm like, dude, yeah, there was nothing there. I said, I drilled 40 holes and cambered every area. They said there was nothing there. I said, they're right here. And he's just like, okay, let's go off of it. And we went there, and that day I think we had 778 or something like that, which is still not a big bag for Chisago. I didn't think we would even top 10 it. I didn't think so. Our game plan was let's not even worry about these other lakes. Let's just focus simply on Chisago and find what we need. Because if we don't make it to day 2, we wasted all our time on other stuff.
Right.
And so, yeah, we happened to get lucky enough and win that day. And the next day was green. And I was not prepared for what we were fishing for.
South Center.
Or was it South Center?
Yeah, I think it was South Center.
Yeah, it was South Center. Yep. And, I was not prepared for the size of fish that were in there. And we just kind of looked at the map, and I told Sean, I said, you know what? Community hole it. I said, what do we got to lose? I said, we made it at this point. And so, yeah, we ended up with 427, I think, and 489 won that. And that's what's amazing about panfish tournaments in the winter is it's by a gram. I mean, every ounce counts. I mean, and when you fish against some of these guys, the Rodriguez's, the Schwabs, Clayton, these guys are good.
Yeah.
I mean, so the fact that
Very
you made
good.
it there and you were able to beat them on the first day and you get to come back and fish the next day, I mean, that's a cool thing. I learned a lot there fishing next to Schwab and Rodriguez. I never thought in a million years to have your scale right next to you and be weighing fish as you catch them. Never would have thought about that. You know, I look at it as bass tournaments where you plug your 5, throw them in the box, and then as you go throughout the day, you know, that's easier. You wouldn't think about that. So just learning all that stuff was kind of crazy and kind of cool. But,
yeah. Anthony and Chad are good dudes. A lot of respect for those guys, you know, back in Michigan now. And it's funny because, like, you know, Anthony cuts his teeth catching salmon on a river all open water season. And everyone knows of them as two of the better ice fishermen our country's ever seen, right? Like, they're in the world. I mean, they've represented the United States. And then here he is in the off season, just putting a hurting on salmon back in Michigan. I mean, just phenomenal. And we've had some pros, we've had some employees that have gone and fished with him, and it's pretty cool. And I've seen that, like you, Mike, that it's not just you're multifaceted. And I kind of said the same thing about Griff when we did some fishing with that, or some podcasting up with Adam. Is I've seen that with these guys that have these abstract minds, like you finding this spot on Chisago. Okay, that's not a typical way of thinking. No disrespect to Lanky, love him. His way of thinking was your typical way of thinking, right? Where you're like, dude, you're not listening. Like, and Lanky's cashed a lot of checks. No digging. Lanky's probably a better pan fisherman than me on the ice, but they see it differently. And I think that's where, when I introduced you, I'm like, man, I'm always seeing you catching these big crappies. Well, it's not luck. It's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that when you watch Adam Griffith on social media, whether he's targeting a crappie in the Crappie Chronicles or a largemouth in a tournament, that he doesn't catch quality fish. And kudos to you on figuring that out and having that way of thought, because if anyone follows Raetz on social media, Mike Raetz Outdoors, you'll see whether you're chasing bluegills and crappies or largemouth or smallmouth or whatever, those fish better hide. You're going to sting them. You're going to find them, you're going to catch them, and they're going to be nice. So that's pretty cool. It's I always admire guys like you that have that multifaceted way of looking at fishing, where it's not just, I'm just this amazing walleye fisherman, you do anything else, and I'm just a blob. You just kind of figure it out. So I think that's kind of cool. And I think you gave our audience a really good tip. And I think what you told them was really think outside the box. You know, and Thane kind of jumped on that bandwagon too. I love how the way that conversation transpired to, well, you were right next to a plowed road. Well, a plowed road, the ice is thicker.
Should be.
Yeah. Well, that creates structure. Red Lake is a prime example. When we talked to Matt Brewer, Drew, you and I, Matt Brewer told you the way he caught all them fish back in the day and catapulted himself above all these tens of thousands of anglers was that he said Red Lake is a barren wasteland when it comes to structure, right? Yeah, there's some this and that and whatever, but he goes, so I learned real quick that I'm fishing the structure under the ice, which is part of the ice, meaning pressure ridges, heaves, cuts in the ice, and that's where I found my fish. And I think there's something to that thing that you mentioned, where you mentioned every time that car would come by, and I think what it was doing is these fish weren't emerging from that spot, they were sliding over to that spot.
Yep, exactly.
And I think they were relating exactly to what you're saying, is that 10 inches thicker. I mean, it's crazy. If you go to Lake of the Woods right now and you look at how much ice is on that plowed road, it is crazy how different. You're talking, some of it's a foot more ice than what's off the plowed road.
Yep.
Todd Stauffer on Lake Minnetonka right now has fish houses in Phelps Bay and has for over a week. Hard shacks. And he's driving out to them because he keeps plowing roads to his shacks because that ice keeps getting thicker. So the great piece of advice, something I think at times we don't really think about.
Fish definitely understand way more than we ever will about what's going on underwater. Like, I agree. 99% of people who ice fish probably just pull up, a lake map, look at the contour and think they can figure it out like that. Not the case.
Yeah.
Right.
Like your ice road, I mean, if there's a spring in the lake, that affects things. If there's current, like these are all things that we have no idea what's really going on with.
Right.
I mean, we might if, you assess the situation, but just looking at a lake map ain't enough.
Well, you called it out yesterday when you and I were looking at that lake we fished near Brainerd, remember?
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, why in the world would we have caught fish there? I would never have fished that spot looking at a map.
It's the stupidest thing. I mean, you have a lake with a couple basins, right? And the fish were up and skinny, almost like a saddle. It's bigger than a saddle. Yeah. Just a big, shallow, flat, narrow area. I'm like, this is so stupid.
Just some wood and weeds there.
Nothing you ever would like. If you told me to go fished that lake and said, Drew, you have to catch a fish. I've never been there before. Not a chance in a million years I would be like, I'm going to go to the shallowest stretch that, especially in that area
middle of winter, midwinter too.
Yeah, like crappie's supposed to go into basins, right? Like, is that what they normally do? Nope, not there.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing though? Like, me and Thane have been fishing. We fished we fished the Granite City Classic together every year, and just fishing out.
I ride along.
You don't ride along with people on tournament day.
We have fun.
What was the comment you said? I'm as good as.
I don't remember.
I'm as good as my partner.
Good as the net.
Yeah, you're like.
No, I said a broken clock's right twice a day.
No, but you were like, I'm as good as my partner in tournaments.
Oh yeah. There they are.
That's what I'm saying.
So the beauty of it is the first year I fished it we took fifth place.
Fourth place.
I caught one fish, uno fish.
Here's the thing: before you ever say you're a bad co-angler or don't contribute as much as the other guy, I know, like, when I'm fishing with people, if I'm fishing in the front or the back of the boat, I want to be doing something different unless we're totally dialed.
100%.
So, like, when we were fishing, like, I knew, let's say I was throwing a half-ounce jig, I was like, Thane, you got to throw a worm. Like, just give him something different, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm sure the same applies for ice fishing tournaments.
Yeah, and and to the other point too of the co-angler, when you run teams like that, the co-angler's never going to catch as many as the guy up in front because we're hitting the juice right off the bat. The best thing I think for the co-angler in itself is he's picking up the scraps. He's chunking and winding. He's throwing a worm out. He's finessing. Sometimes you're just kind of twitching stuff along. He's all about it.
Finesse, chunking,
Chatterbait Willie.
Chatterbait Jones.
Chatterbait. And it's
little Senko Willie. Why wouldn't you?
Tommy, for instance. I called him Big Fish Tommy last year. I mean, one of the first fish of the day on Minnewaska was a 520 something.
And you can see Tom holding up the ice spy in one of our thumbnails.
Yeah. And but the co-angler, like I always say this, is if somebody's going to catch the big one that day, it's going to be that co-angler because he's just fishing back there at that point. And he's going to hit the stuff afterwards. We may roll up to a tree and I may flip that thing 7 times, not get a bite, and you come running through it and pitch in there, and all of a sudden, bang, there's a 5 pounder.
This joker, though, and I love watching Mike Raetz fish, and I love fishing with him, but I always know that he's going to whoop my tail because I've never seen anybody fish as tight to cover as this guy can, and he will skip a dock, and you might as well be standing on the dock.
I'm pretty close to him.
And he's 60 yards underneath this thing. I'm like, you're like in their living room, dude.
And you know when he's going to set the hook?
Oh, yeah, because the foot stomp's coming.
That's what I was alluding to.
You get the foot stomp, and, lady, he's about to crack the whip. Look out. Yeah. I've seen some things.
You watched a little bass come over my head once.
I watched him set the hook, and next thing you know, there's a fish flying by my face. I'm like, what the heck was that?
Set the hook hard.
We have fun. Oh. That's the thing. You got to jack them.
You got to stomp the foot.
You stomp the foot. If you stomp the foot, that adds at least 50% more.
But I just get excited to get the bite. Yeah. See, so I don't even think about the foot stomp. You just catch so many. It's natural. I'm just like, oh my God, I got a bite.
Set the hook.
The foot stomp. That's what I was hoping you were going to say. I was alluding to because I knew Raetz known for the foot stomp.
Yeah, the good old foot stomp. It's. I don't know why I do it, to be honest with you. I think it's a little bit of excitement, but the other part of it is like, I'm gonna rip your face off, boy. Hold on. You ever seen that meat? They got that like I don't know. It's one of them GIFs. What do you call those things? GIFs or memes or whatever.
GIF. Yeah.
GIF. Yeah. And you got the one where the guy's sitting at the office chair and the guy goes to set the hook and then all of a sudden he flies up, hits the ceiling, and comes back. I've sent that to you a couple times. Like what it looks like for the bass when I set the hook, and he goes up, smacks the cover, and then falls back down.
And then would they repay you when they pull the whole rod and reel combo out of your hand?
Oh, yeah. I've had that happen. I actually lost a rod and reel because I had a big bass come up the side of the boat and smack my spinnerbait. Just got done catching one. Oh, yeah. This was on, I was with Travis that day. And we looked around for an hour, and I'd caught a nice fish. It was like 3.5, 4. I was getting ready for a tournament, so I'm weighing my fish, seeing where my areas are, what my average size is. And so I catch one, pop the spinnerbait, throw it off the side of the boat like we always do. Not thinking anything of it, and all of a sudden I'm sitting there weighing the fish, and the fish must have came and bumped it once because all of a sudden I heard, I'm like, what the heck was that? Next thing you know, rod is just doubled and over the boat and flying. That fish, I chased him around for an hour trying to get my rod back. He had a spinnerbait. It was one of the Ascent spinnerbaits, so it was a blaze orange blade. And I watched that fish come right upside the boat. Didn't have I'm looking for this fish for a while. I'm like, he's going to jump again. He's going to try to throw this thing. He's got a 7.5 foot rod flying behind him right now. And yeah, the last time I saw him as he came jumping up right at the side of the boat. I didn't have anything. If I had a net, I would have been able to scoop right under him. But yeah, I've had rods come flying. Last year on Clearwater, and I think the fish just bit.
It just took off running away from you.
Yeah. Scared me all. I didn't think I had a bite. We were flipping pencil reeds, and all of a sudden flip in there, and the next thing you know, my rod just shoop, right out of my hand. He took off, and we went chasing after it into the pencil reeds. We got that rod back. So
what do you got planned the rest of the winter?
The rest of the winter?
I shouldn't say rest of the winter. We're kind of starting it. It's the first week of January, but
yeah.
What's on the docket for Mr. Raetz?
Oh, we got lots of fishing to do yet. Definitely gonna be doing that. Be fishing the Frankies again. Kind of a little redemption run. I'll be doing that. Clayton's got a derby coming up this year.
Saw that. That's
so
awesome.
I'll be fishing that one. I'm in Waska. I like it. It's new, different water. I'll be hanging out with you guys here periodically at the UPL. Coming to those ones. And try to make some trips to Lake of the Woods. Go catch some walleyes.
I can't believe I hear you say walleye.
Yeah, I get addicted to that place, man. It's just
Lake of the Woods or walleyes?
Lake of the Woods. I do like walleye. Like, you guys be crazy, but I've been fishing walleyes for a couple of weeks.
Stop it.
I do that in the morning time, and then once I get done with that, then I'll
Raetz Meister's turning over a new leaf.
I am. I got addicted to that tikka minnow.
Yeah.
That thing is fun. You don't even
see
the fish show up.
that fish you're catching with whiskers, that's not a walleye. You know that, right?
Oh, yeah, we're catching the kitties.
Okay.
We're doing that. Yep. We had some fun on that. I got a couple spots for you to look at, too, by the way, when we're all done with this. We went looking for crappies, and they were not crappies, and there was more than I've ever seen before.
I've seen them stack up lately in spots that you would never imagine because of the amount of pressure that chain's getting.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm with you. It's funny some of the spots these catfish are showing up in, and I think it's probably good that they're moving like they are because I'm seeing the pressure dwindled a hair.
Yep.
And I think it's because there's 3 or 4 classic spots that everyone beats to death, and those spots are just not producing the last couple of years.
No, they're not. I was at a couple of those, 2-3 weeks ago, and I didn't see one. Not one, and I sat there for an hour, and I'd kind of just hop around in the Bearcat and didn't see a single fish, and I'm like, man, these fish really got pounded. Same thing for walleyes, too. I wasn't seeing them in their typical spots. I was catching these fish in random spots. Like I was catching smallmouth and walleyes together a couple weeks ago in a spot that I would have never thought. I was thinking, smallmouth are around here. But the fact that walleyes were sitting off this was just kind of odd to me. And I think it's what you're saying. They're getting pushed around. They're getting pushed to new areas. Things have really changed the past couple of years, I would say. I could personally tell anybody you can knock all your waypoints off your graph and start over. Because they're just not
I'd agree with that.
A lot of that's that water depth. I mean, one thing when you guys were talking about, how shallow things are, that's one thing when you think about ice fishing. You can't walk up to a lake and look around the shoreline and look around and say, hey, you know what, this lake's 2 foot low or it's a foot high. You don't notice that so much through the ice or on the ice, You roll up to a lake and you're kind of like, just looks like the lake. Well, no, it's not. It's totally different because you just don't realize how low it is.
Yeah, what's kind of funny about our lakes up here versus in the south, like one of the FLW tournaments I worked, it was on Sam Rayburn. Like south is obviously a lot of big giant reservoirs and the water fluctuates quite a bit, or the fish seem to be more used to it. Well, that year the lake was up 10 feet in the spring. Wow. And all like when you get shallow water up here, what do you think? You're going to think, oh, I'm going to go way the heck up into the jungle and start flipping trees and doing crazy stuff because all the fish are moving up, Well, that day or that tournament, all the fish they just stayed put. They're like, well, think about it. They're like, oh, we got like 10 more feet of water, but this weed line's still pretty nice. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, they also might know that it's going to change again.
Yeah.
Like
they're more used to it for sure. But like up here right now, especially the last 2 summers, like your bass fishing spots where it's normally like nice cheesed up duckweed that's like 5-6 feet deep is now like 2 to 3. And you're like, this is just too skinny.
Yeah.
Like, a fish can't live here. Maybe like a tiny bluegill, but like you're not going to be, catching big, 4-pound bass. Same thing with ice fishing too. There's not enough room.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like a fish let's kind of get on its side and start like floundering its way underneath.
Kind of do their thing. Like I notice that a lot too. I'm a very shallow water fisherman. I'm in 2 to 4 feet. I don't go past 8. That's just kind of my comfort zone. And I really had to change the way
Open
I
water
fish this year. Yeah,
yeah, dude,
and even
same.
winter. Winter's the same way. Matt knows. I'm a weed bed freak. If I can find that, like we have that by us, but it's not, the creme de la creme. It's basin stuff. So, but when I fished the UPL, I learned so much about weed bed fishing that it was just stuck on me, and I can't even do that where I'm at anymore. I mean, you can, but it's not. It's hard to find those weeds in that depth. You know what I mean? Everything's so different now. So yeah, I totally understand what you're saying on that. You have to redo everything you did and just relearn the whole process. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I think some of the stuff that I've heard, a lot of people talk about and what I've learned is, you roll up to that lake for the first time, you've never fished it, like you said, Mike, UPL, fishing new bodies of water. Mm-hmm. The easy chip shot is let's find good weeds, let's find the green weeds, yep. and sometimes it's cabbage, sometimes it's coontail, sometimes it's sandgrass, whatever, right? I mean, you just figure out and put it together and figure out what those fish are holding in, mm-hmm. and that's probably the best tip I think that I've heard anybody ever give is you're going to a new body of water, start there, because typically those fish will stay put.
They'll be there, and look for something completely different on that whole entire weed bed. I think people find weeds right away, and they're like, there they are. It's like, no, there's something different, whether it's just an open pocket, maybe a 6-inch freaking drop, like a 6-inch drop in the grass, one patch of milfoil. That's what did it for us in Big Marine. It was one patch of milfoil sitting there.
How often are you using an underwater camera?
A lot. I use it a ton. Even basin stuff.
Yeah.
We use forward-facing sonar, and we could see him and all that stuff, and we kind of get a good idea of the size. But that camera does everything for you. It tells me, the mood of the fish. I use it a lot for that. So I can understand more about a fish just watching them swim in the water than I can on forward-facing sonar or on my Vexilar. My Vexilar is a great tool for catching fish. I think by far that is the reason why I catch it, because I understand it completely. I understand what the fish do, their moods. But using a camera, you can tell different things. I mean, if the fish are looking up, they're feeding. If they're going down, they're going to stick around areas more often. I mean, it's just so many little details. And what I mean by that with looking down and stuff like that, like bloodworms, any of the bugs that are coming out, if you ever notice that, fish are going to be more concentrated to areas. So if I look on the camera and they're just kind of looking down a little bit, they're kind of swimming like this, I understand that those fish are looking for things on the bottom. So they're going to hang out a little bit more in that area because that's where the food source is. If they're looking up, they're chasing. I mean, if they're looking straight, they're kind of just lethargic, doing their thing. They're cruising. So, I mean, little things like that on a camera make such a big difference by understanding the mood of that fish.
Let's say you have like 100-yard weed flat that is kind of there from summer fishing, or maybe you've never been there, but it's like a shallow flat, 5-6 feet. How are you approaching that when you just go up to it in the winter? Are you just drilling the whole thing? Are you drilling 5 holes, checking it with your camera?
So what I will do is I'll camera it right away, but there's a process to drilling these holes. And I don't think people understand that. And I stress this a bunch in my seminars when I talk about it, because that's kind of the thing I like talking about is shallow water weeds. The first thing I'm going to do is obviously you're going to look at your map. Now, most people would start on the edges of the weed bed and work their way in. I start in the center. And what I'm doing is obviously your map's not going to be perfect, but if I drill in the center, I'm going to get kind of an idea of how the whole flat lays out. And what I mean by that is, are the weeds thick? What are you doing? Because you're getting into the middle. You're getting into the juice of the whole thing. And so I'm going to notice if the weeds are thick or not. And then from that point, now I'm going to start looking for something different. So if it's a big bed with cabbage on there, I'm going to look for something that is, different, like milfoil. Milfoil is huge. I love milfoil. That's one of my favorite things. I struggle with it in the summertime flipping it because we just don't have it by us. But coming down in the metro, fish really use that stuff to their advantage. So you're finding thick stuff, but then at the same time, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for pockets. I'm not looking for the thickest spot of the whole entire weed bed. I'm looking for an area where they have somewhere to travel. so they have somewhere to go. And you'd be amazed at how many times that you just get off of that thicker spot a little bit and find that traveling area, and that's where the fish are.
The corridors.
Yes, and they're not going to, when you drill holes, these fish are going to run away from you. And the best thing that you can do, and what I do, is they'll stay put too, but don't go and pound that area. Don't just drill 40 holes, 20 holes, even 10 holes. I literally drill holes as I need them. So if I find fish, I'm going to stay in that one hole unless, I see them farther off in the distance. Then I'll go drill one hole there. The biggest thing I've always learned is use your carbon footprint in the shallow water, but do not let the light get through. Keep it as natural and normal as possible. Don't disturb the area. These fish are there, and when they start getting holes punched all over them, they're going to move quick. Mm-hmm. They're going to get out of there. So what I'll do is I will literally drill holes how I need them. So I'll fish that hole, and then once that hole dies down, I'll walk 20 yards and drill another hole. I don't like things staying tight together. Like I said, I want to spread things out. I want to keep it as natural as possible because these fish will spook off, especially crappies. They're really good
especially when the sun changes direction.
Yes.
Because you cut that hole, and as that sun gets above you, that angle of light going into the water changes. Mm-hmm. People don't think about that.
No.
If you watch some of the guys in the UPL, as their day progresses, they kick in their holes.
Yep, that's one.
They kick in their holes, so as that sun changes its trajectory and it shines down certain angles of that hole and penetrates more of that water column, they kick in their holes. So when that sun hits there's not as much light going in.
Yep.
A lot of guys will punch their holes, and then they're like, "Man, the bite was good for a while. It must be that sunrise crappie bite." Those crappies biting those weeds all day long. Mm-hmm. But what's happening is, like you said, their environment's changing because now that sun's up here, and those holes you punched, it beacons. Mm-hmm. It's like strobe lights being shot into that water, and it turns them fish off.
Yep. And yeah, if they could, if we could literally watch them, I bet you they'll run right around them. Mm-hmm. They'll run right around those holes.
You talked about milfoil. Matt, you maybe remember this. I know you do because you were probably in the thick of it with those boys out on Tonka a few years ago.
Oh, yeah.
When the bluegills, you couldn't see them, but they would drop their camera down, and if you'd look close enough, you could see beady little eyes buried into the pockets in the milfoil strands. And it was such a, when Matt talks about some of these anglers being the best of the best, oh my goodness, these guys, the amount of effort they put into finding these fish, the quality fish that it takes to win, it's phenomenal. It's mind-blowing and very, very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
We were taking sticks and moving the milfoil that day. So you'd get into the thick spot of it, and you'd take something like your scooper or something like that, and you just try to slowly push it away so you get your jig in there because they were right in the milfoil. They weren't 2 inches outside of it. It's crazy. I'd never seen that before until that. Yeah,
that's why guys carry them yardsticks.
Yeah,
in the UPL.
Yeah, we were taking 2-ounce weights and putting them on the camera so we could punch through the foil.
They
to
reach
see
down
them.
and move the weeds.
Yeah,
it's fish you just wouldn't see, but as soon as you drop the bait down there, they would just pop out enough to grab it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like unbelievable.
If anyone hasn't seen what the milfoil looks like underwater, it looks like kelp, kind of. Mm-hmm. Like that's what I think of when I see that stuff on Lake Minnetonka. It's like, oh, there's a crappie in there. It looks like he's behind in a jail cell or something, tucked in there.
Mm-hmm. Hey, buddy.
Yep. Well, remember Independence?
Yeah.
Remember how that went down? For
yeah, we just talked about that before you were on.
Isn't that nuts?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
18 inches of water.
Yeah, you come running out and you got all the cattail fuzz all over you and stuff after it's all done. Yeah, me and Trav, we went in there and we gave up right away. So more power to the guys that stuck it out that day. But yeah, that I would have never thought. I would have never guessed that those fish would have been where they were.
We were saying maybe in March.
Yeah.
Maybe, but that was our midwinter tournament.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was cold.
And that to this day is still one of the stories in the UPL where it's like, what was the craziest bite you saw? It wasn't the 14-pound Stuart Manning Sean Begg. It was things like that where you're like, yeah, I don't know, guys were catching crappies and bluegills in 18 inches of water in the dead of winter in the cattails, and people are like, what? Yeah, I wouldn't have believed it if I didn't see it.
Yeah, if you didn't go in there and fished, you didn't catch a bluegill that day.
Yeah,
that was where they were. We were dumbfounded. It was I don't know if we'll ever see something like that again, but that was cool.
Cool. Well, we'll probably wrap things up here in a bit, but hey, before you roll out, Mike, people that maybe don't follow you, how can they follow you? And then give our listeners, maybe a parting word of advice, maybe a goal of yours this winter or some kind of tidbit that they can, remember you by.
Yeah. So, yeah, you can see me. I'm on Facebook and kind of on Instagram. Facebook a lot, though. Mike Raetz, my main page, and then also Mike Raetz Outdoors. Otherwise, Mike Raetz Outdoors on Instagram, and then Mike Raetz on TikTok. I started kind of doing that. It's kind of fun.
TikTok.
Little tic-tac for
It's
Mike
kind of fun
Raetz.
doing that. It's
Oh,
kind of fun
boy.
doing that.
So are you like dancing on this thing or what?
The
What's this
Raetzmeister.
are you the holding the towel and then drop the towel type of program, or what do we got going
What
on?
kind of
just-
TikTok are you watching?
Hey now, hey now.
I'm just catching crappies and playing drums.
I thought there was only one TikTok. Is there more?
Yeah.
There might be a couple. We don't even know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things on the web.
Sorry. Apologize if I'm on the wrong side of the TikToks.
Yeah.
The Tic Tacs.
So if anyone's listening, I'd take the advantage of Mike if you get a chance to see him on the ice. He did tell you if you are out in the summer on the horseshoe chain, you'll see him. He's out. I can speak on behalf of you. I know you believe the same way. Very approachable. If you see Mikey at a boat launch or on the ice, come up, say hi. I know you share a lot of information. A ton, like all of us probably to a fault, but that's what we love to do and get excited. So reach out to Mike on social media, ask him any questions you might have, pick his brain some more, and he'll be kicking butt here at Clam Building Shacks again. Before we know it, I know you're probably back on that assembly line tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Packing stuff, and
Ready to
can't
go.
thank you enough. So Mike Raetz, we had Thane Jensen on today. This was awesome. We had 2 new great guests here, sharing the wealth here within the walls at Clam, getting people excited again. Weird conditions out there if you're listening. Don't let them scare you, though. Think outside the box. We talked about a little bit of impromptu, a little bit of improvising, right? Yep. To get out there and chase some fish. I know it's cliche. You can't catch them from the couch. There's truth to it. But, again, go out there and think about it. I'm not going to go fishing tomorrow if I'm limited to my feet and fish a body of water that I have to walk across the lake to.
Correct.
I know it sounds dumb. It sounds like common sense. But if sense was common, right? So that would be my thing. Take a look at something that makes more sense. Get out there, chase some fish, have some fun. So Raetzy, Thane, can't thank you enough. You guys already know Drew. So Ice Team Podcast, thanks for tuning in again. Thanks for bearing with us for the first half. And we are now going to release, this is our first episode for 2023.
First one of 23, yeah.
I got to be on the first one.
You were on the
You are the first one of the year, Raetz.
Pressure.
Oh, my
You're so
land.
special.
Yeah, you and Thane, the first ones of 2023.
Holy smokes, we
The
can
bar has
can only
been
go up
set.
from here.
I was going to say.
I like that.
The bar
yeah.
has been set. And
Yeah, it's gonna be way
It's
higher
only
by
going
the
up,
end of it,
boys.
Yeah,
I was just going to say the bar has been
hit the
set,
lowest of the low.
and people are tripping over it.
Yeah,
We just,
Been
you
set
guys
low.
were actually the first 2 people we saw today walking
Yeah.
the door.
we made it go down, bud.
Absolutely.
All right.
So thanks for joining us. Thanks for tuning in. Check us out next time on the Ice Team Podcast.